Welcome to FedScoop TV and our special series on advancing digital government in the cloud. I'm Wyatt Cash, your host, and today I'm with Dr. David Bray. He is the CIO with the Federal Communications Commission. Welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me, Wyatt.
We're exploring opportunities in the way cloud can help advance digital government. Your agency and your work's been recognized as kind of having actually made a lot of that progress. Tell us a little bit about what you've learned and how other agencies might be able to be taking advantage of the state of the cloud today.
Sure. So we've seen at the FCC, by going to 100% public cloud and commercial service provider, really three main benefits. First and foremost, it's speed. Being able to stand things up much faster than if we tried to do it on premise. In the past, it would have taken us 6 or 7 months to get you a new system or even a working prototype. But now if you come in and you give us actual requirements, we can stand something up in less than 2 days. And that's necessary because the public expects, especially for public service, services that are being updated and are not 5 years out of date or 10 years out of date. You've got to be able to move with speed. Second, resiliency. It's not that anything on the internet is completely infallible, but being able to have that additional ability to spin up if there's all of a sudden a surge in additional demand, and only be able to pay for it when it's actually there, and also then be able to respond if there is something that is trying to flood your network or something like that. That's only possible if it's cloud. If you do it on premise, you don't have a chance. And then finally, really it's about effectiveness of your spend. So instead of spending money to maintain a system that then you also have to continuously update, instead you're actually paying through cloud for those who are actually providing you the service of updating it for you. And so it's actually spending more money on development and not spending it on maintaining the legacy system. Now, why should a public cloud care? Well, I think moving to cloud and why it's imperative for interagency and all of the departments and agencies to move to the cloud is really we need to streamline how we do the business of public service. And a lot of that's baked into legacy IT. And so if we have any chance of actually breaking past how we did things in the 1980s and 1990s, because the world has changed, you have to get off legacy IT, get to the cloud, that then allows you to streamline the business processes present in your organization and benefit the public.
Talk to me a little about your perspective on, moving to the cloud is more than just an IT lift. It's a change management process. What have you learned through your exercise in changing your staff and the organization to make moving to the cloud effective?
I agree 100%. So digital transformation begins with first asking, why does the organization even exist? You have to ask, what's our purpose? What's our value proposition? And from that, then it's thinking about how can we best use technology to deliver on that? And when you're doing that, you're oftentimes changing how people used to work. We've found that actually the biggest challenge to moving to cloud is not so much the IT, but changing the mindsets of the people that used to be delivering the IT. That could be both in the IT shop, but it could also be people that are in the programmatic side. Right. Again, a lot of what public service does is baked into its IT. And so if I'm transforming something so that instead of you having to figure out, for example, we had an instance where you had to figure out one of 18 different forms to download. You had to either scan it or fax it back. And who has a fax machine nowadays is an interesting question. But send it back to the FCC, and then eventually it would be scanned and processed. But now we have something that in less than 7 questions, before you know it, you filled out a form, it's automatically entered, and the FCC can actually start operating it right away. But that's changing the jobs of people that used to handle scanning the forms. That's changing the jobs that used to process it. And they're concerned about, what's my job?
Right.
What am I doing next? And so oftentimes digital transformation is helping people cope with the loss of what they used to do and help encourage them to embrace with courage and passion what they might be doing now in the new way forward and helping them train it to make it possible. Because if we really want to get to cloud, we've got to do that for government people. At the FCC, the average person has been there for 15 and a half years, as well as contractors. The average contractor has been there for 19 years. And so it's not just thinking about this is just a government employee story. This is also a private sector story, which is we have to convince the private sector, look, I know you made money by carrying and feeding for the servers on premise. We're not going to do that anymore. It's not the best use of taxpayer dollars. Now what we're going to do is look to you to help integrate and actually remix across cloud services and help us use them with speed, but not the care and feeding model you were used to.
That makes a lot of sense. Tell me a little bit about moving forward. How do you see new services or enhanced services being put into place now that you've moved to the cloud?
So I often like to say that cloud is the appetizer. What we're really looking at is the main course, which is artificial intelligence, making sense of large amounts of data, visualization of that data, serving as that trusted broker. All these things are only possible if you're in the cloud because you just don't have the capacity or the ability to scale if you do it on premise. My vision is, if you think about it, if you have a smartphone, and we know in the United States that lots of people do, although it's not everybody yet, even if you just have a regular phone, you have the ability to actually send information to anybody in the United States at speed that was unprecedented for most people 30 or 40 years ago.
Right.
And so I often say packet latency is not 4 days on horseback between,
Right.
say, Kansas and DC. It's now 4 seconds. So what can we do to encourage the public, if they wanted to either send information about, I'm concerned about transportation here, or I'm concerned about energy over here, that doesn't require government workers to spend their time identifying these things. Instead, people can do it in their local communities, and that can bubble up, and that can actually present things that need to be solved either at the local level or at the national level. But it really is this partnership between the public, private sector, and government, as opposed to anybody by itself. And again, that's only possible, that reinventing of how we do the business of public service, we can only get there if we go to cloud first, and then have the conversation about, okay, now that we need to do things on a fixed budget and we need to be smarter and faster about doing it, how can we use machine learning? How can we allow the public to send information? And so while cloud may sound like a tech subject, to me, at the end of the day, if we don't embrace it, we're not going to be able to move the nation forward for how it's going to operate in the 21st century.
Mm-hmm. Now, the FCC has demonstrated it can be done to move to the cloud, but many agencies are still struggling to get over some classic hurdles. What couple of things do you think government in general could change to make it easier for agencies to accelerate their adoption to the cloud?
So first, we need to recognize that this is hard not because of the technology, but because it's changing what people do. I often say that people like change just as long as they don't have to do it themselves. And so what I would recommend is, just like how we had this announcement that said we were going to go to the moon by the end of the decade, and sure enough, in less than 9 years we did, let's set a milepost of in 2.5 years or less. So by the end of 2019, we should have 75% or more of federal civilian IT in the cloud. And so that makes it a very concerted effort. People know what the shared goal is. Now, each agency is going to have different paths to get there. That depends on their context. But by agreeing to the shared goal, now you can engage the private sector for how do we solve this problem. You can engage the public because they may have answers as well. And then you can begin to use OMB submissions to say, for example, how much of your IT is still legacy IT? How much of it is still on-premise? How much of it has not moved to the cloud? And actually have that be a metric so you can begin to see how things are going, and also allow the sort of encouragement model of if you can pitch me a solution that can move to speed, we treat it like internal venture capitalists. We'll give you, see what you can do in 3 months and 6 months. And if you have results, we'll give you even more. Until we set that large goal, however, we can't really begin to get the best multiplier effect of the private sector's input, the public's input, and the people on the inside's inputs. We also need to think about how do we, one, improve procurement. To me, it's, we spent 1.5 years procuring 14 different cloud solutions, and we did it all by ourselves at the FCC. But the reality is those cloud solutions are needed in other agencies as well. So why not have things like GSA and the NASA SOUP and the NIH and ITAC schedule be this vehicle where they do it once, and as long as I have money, I can put money on it and I don't have to do the procurement by myself. At the same time, same thing with security. For something that's a public cloud solution, it's available to everybody. We should just have one agency scan it and share the controls, as opposed to every agency being responsible for scanning the same cloud for its security metrics. That would help a lot as well. And then finally, we've got to do education. Education both of policymakers, but also the people that are doing it, and most importantly, education of the people doing the mission, that cloud changes the art of the possible, and we need them to be partners in this as well to reinvent how we do the business of public service.
I think the encouraging news is we're a lot further along than maybe some would have given government credit just a couple of years ago. So, and your agency is a good example of the progress that can be made. So
there's a lot of progress that's happening behind the scenes, and I have no doubt that we actually could, if we stuck that flag and said 2.5 years, 75% or more cloud.
Well, let's hope we get there in that time frame.
Let's hope.
David Bray, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Wyatt.
I'm Wyatt Cash with FedScoop TV. Thanks for watching today.